Hello, fungi friends, and welcome to episode 9 of the Eversio Experience podcast. If you consider yourself an environmentalist, an eco warrior, a nature lover, green activist, a planet protector, or even a tree hugger, this episode is for you. So 4 years ago, I quit my job as a public school teacher, as many of you know, to make Eversio Wellness my full-time, really passion and purpose project. Why did I do that? I was after higher purpose. It's as simple as that. I have been asked so many times, where does one begin when you decide to start a company like ours? And the answer is with a mission and a vision. Today, our mission is to change lives through fungi. But long before that, before Eversio even had a name, we also knew that our business would be humanity plus. It would offer something that was good for people and for the planet versus companies that are, I guess, what you could consider humanity minus. These would be companies that are producing products that diminish people's health or are harmful to the planet. And sadly, in some cases, both. You know who I'm talking about. We had this belief that there had to be a better way to do business than what we saw happening with other big companies in our space. We knew we wanted to run our company like we were operating our personal lives at that time, and that meant consciously. We committed very early on at Eversio to operating a conscious business. And what does that mean? Well, it means instead of just mindlessly going about business to simply turn a profit, the old way of thinking, our hope was that this purpose would inspire and motivate everybody that came to work at Eversio towards something meaningful. And today we're very grateful to have created just that. Operating a conscious business means being open and connected to the world around us and making choices that are really aligned with our values, our personal values, our company values. So one of the first things we did as we were setting up our workspace here at Eversio HQ was to put this huge custom decal up on our wall, and it would remind us daily of our intentions as we set out. So with the help of our fabulous friend, Joala Taylor, JT, we love you, we emblazoned our wall with this gigantic decal that's still there today that says 10 principles of conscious business. And 4 years later, I still look at those principles every single day. And there are two that are directly related to what we're going to talk about here. Number one, it says our business is a healing force for the planet and its people. And that means that at Eversio Wellness, we actively contribute to both human health and environmental sustainability. And the second one says our business is a blueprint for our vision of the world. So we work hard to reflect our vision of a healthier, more conscious world. Every aspect of Eversio Wellness, which means our products, our education initiatives, like this podcast, and our sustainability efforts represent our commitment to natural healing, conscious awareness, and environmental responsibility. By embodying these principles daily, we are thriving. We're so glad to be able to share that as a conscious, values-driven brand. We hope that we're making a lasting positive impact on both people and the planet, and that we're so proud to be able to say so many people thought we couldn't do it. You can't run a conscious business and turn a profit and be successful in business, but this is what success looks like to us. And it's because of all of you in the Eversio community believing in us doing things a little bit differently. So we're not talking about mushrooms today, but instead we are going to give you a bit of a backstage tour of some of those big decisions that were made here at Eversio HQ in the early days of building our business. So typically when you start a company like ours, it's all about the product, and it has to be. And for sure it was for us. As you know, we were starting to include mushrooms in our lives, and we wanted the best. We wanted to heal as quickly as we could, and we wanted to share it with everybody. But what we hadn't thought about was how we were going to share those mushrooms with other people when it wasn't just us consuming them or sharing them with close family and friends. So I'll tell you a little story. In the spring of 2020, I think it was actually spring break, we were driving to the lake where we love to be, where we spend our time connecting with nature, and driving along the highway, Craig and I discussing this company and this brand and what it was going to look like when we decided to tell everybody we'd become mushroom nerds and we wanted to share it with the world. It occurred to me like a lightning strike that we would have to put these mushrooms into packaging. And we hadn't thought about it. I didn't know what it would be made of. I didn't know what it would look like. I didn't know how that would function as a delivery. And I wasn't a business person, so really had no background of where to draw any even idea of that from. So I had a bit of a panic. What are we going to do? We need to think about this. This is a big decision. And I wanted it to be one that we made, not that somebody else made for us when they were doing the bookkeeping. And at that moment, as I'm having this moment of worry and concern, and we need to make this decision quickly if we're doing this, I literally turned to the lane beside me on the right, out my passenger side window, and there was a little white pickup truck with the word food pack on the side. And I turned back toward Craig and I said, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" And he looked, and I looked back toward him. The clock said 11:11, and I told him, "Don't worry, I've got this." And literally, our first packaging was created by a company here close to us in the lower mainland of British Columbia called Food Pack. And I believe everything that this company has created since then has come to us when we have asked for it, when we have opened ourselves up to believing that synchronicities are just messages from ourselves, messages from the universe that we're on the right path and we're doing the right thing and to continue moving forward. And so we did. So I'm going to ask you, Des, before I even go on to talk about our packaging or what happened after that moment, because at the same time, you would have been in naturopathic medical school and experiencing so many products similar to ours and their packaging. So talk to us about what you see from the majority of other supplement brands and what you were thinking as a new ND at that time.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the supplement industry, you see a ton of plastic. The things that were horrifying to me were the little sample bottles that you get because as a student, you have access to all of these different products and you get to experience them, which is amazing to actually get to try them yourselves. But when you see these little sample bottles with not much product in them, but they're full of plastic, it's concerning. And simply put, we are part of an industry that needs improvement. The global supplement industry creates 1.8 billion plastic bottles every year.
Shocking.
That has to stop. No more excuses. I think it's time for all companies, large and small. We're a small family business. We're doing it. So it's time for all companies to find alternatives to plastic packaging. And I just think it's so important for us to have these options, right? As a small family business, we are sitting here and we are doing it. And there are much larger companies than us who are willing to cut corners and who are willing to put their products in plastic because it's cheap. That's the reality of it, is that it's cheap. But with plastics, there's also a personal concern for health. What are the implications of plastic? Why do we even have plastic in the supplement industry? Why is plastic popular or present in so many different industries? And I think it's important to understand where it comes from. So there's a molecule or compounds. We've heard of the term BPA. We've heard of phthalates. So BPA is important because BPA was really instrumental in the plastic industry. BPA was actually first synthesized by chemists in a lab in 1891.
Whoa.
So a long time ago. And so in the 1930s, there was first evidence of BPA toxicity when scientists discovered that it was an artificial estrogen. Estrogen is a hormone. So its use as a pharmaceutical hormone is precluded by the invention of another synthetic chemical, which is called DES, which has even more potent estrogenic properties. And DES was later taken off the market as a pharmaceutical when it was linked to reproductive cancer. So there was a clear link between cancer and this DES because of its artificial estrogen capabilities. Then fast forward to the 1940s and the 1950s, this was where the use of BPA was used to manufacture a harder plastic called polycarbonate and to make epoxy resins, which are used as linings for metal food cans and a variety of other products.
Let's just put it right in the food that we're going to put in our body, even though research clearly shows it shouldn't be going in our body. Like, who's making those decisions? I want to know who is making those decisions.
I know. And it's interesting because if you think back to more historical times, we have seen these apothecaries where they are using amber glass jars. Like, why were they using amber glass jars, and what transitioned us to using plastic?
Money.
You know, medicine women in the 1800s, they had their glass apothecary to protect whatever's inside of that from light, heat, and moisture and oxygen. And essentially, amber has these natural light filtering properties. So, why did we go into plastics? And what's the implication of that as our health? Because we know that BPA is an artificial estrogen, but it's in many products. And we've heard the term endocrine disrupting. It's all over social media. What is it actually doing, and how is this implicated in our health? For this endocrine disruption piece, during the manufacturing of plastic materials, additives are being used like bisphenol A or BPA and phthalate esters. And their ability to leach out with age and with heat has resulted in ubiquitous contaminants of the ecosystem. So, the ecosystem, the world we live, including our own human body tissues. That's pretty
Because we
scary.
are part of the ecosystem.
We're part of the ecosystem. These additives are used for toughness of plastic, flexibility of plastic, and the color of plastic. BPA specifically is used for its cross-linking properties as an additive in polycarbonate plastics and epoxy resins to harden the product for use as food storage containers and water bottles. We all know Tupperware industry, water bottles, there are many plastic options. Phthalates are esters of phthalic acid, and those are used as plasticizers to reduce the brittleness as well as increase the flexibility, especially in PVC plastics. But they're also added to many consumer goods like adhesives and paints, air freshener products, and personal care products. BPA is everywhere. And we get most of our exposure by eating foods that have been in containers made with BPA. It's also possible to pick up BPA through air, dust, and water. That's why it's important, to make sure that you're dusting frequently, not only just for the dust itself, but also what's contained within that dust. And over recent years, these compounds have been shown to possess these endocrine disrupting properties, even as early as when it was first discovered that it had these toxic properties. But how is it an endocrine disruptor? Well, these endocrine disrupting chemicals, they may act by altering hormone synthesis in the endocrine gland itself, so the actual hormone gland. It can alter the transport, the metabolism, the excretion, which means getting rid of it, of the hormone, or by competing with physiological hormones for binding to receptor sites in those target cells, those organs or areas where it's supposed to go. And it can mimic those hormones inappropriately or antagonize those hormone actions. So we've seen this being implicated in male and female reproductive functions, in thyroid hormone function, immune function and cancers, disruption of glucose homeostasis and diabetes, cardiovascular disease, obesity. And me bringing this up is not for fear mongering, but it's really to face the reality of the situation and that it can impact our health. And there are things that we can do to minimize our exposure.
It's awareness.
It's awareness.
Awareness.
It's awareness. These contaminants have been found in like 90% of people just because of the exposure, and especially in utero is one of the most vulnerable environments for these contaminants. As consumers or as individuals who are conscious of our health, because if you're listening to this podcast and you're still listening at this point, you're somebody who's wanting to learn more. Maybe you don't know a ton about sustainability and conscious business, but you're really trying to benefit your health in some way and learn more. And that's amazing. How can we make changes to minimize our exposure? One of them being, can we limit the amount of plastic that our food is in? If you're taking a lunch to work, can you bring your own containers? Or if you are eating out somewhere and picking up food, can you bring your own containers? Instead of getting a coffee cup there, can you bring your own reusable container so that you're minimizing this exposure? I think that is something that's really important that we can do because glass is infinitely reusable. It doesn't have those BPA or phthalate molecules in there. And we are going to talk about glass further on, but the reality is that plastic is an issue. And you have to make a decision as a business owner to put your product into something. I think that's something that we really overlook because we focus on the mushrooms themselves. So how did you address this?
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you talk about it from a health perspective, because to be perfectly honest, it wasn't even part of the conversation around the table in the very
Mm.
beginning. We talked about plastic a lot because I think I was going through whatever kind of spiritual awakening I was going through at that time in my life. I had just become somebody who felt so connected to the world as if I was the world and the world was me. And if I was healing my body by putting these good things in my body, these beautiful mushrooms, I also felt like I had to be putting good things into the world at the same time. It was like I had this motivation to heal not only myself, but the planet at the same time. It was almost a scary time for me to think that I had so much work to do in my own body and on the planet at the same time. So the conversation about plastic was very much an environmental conversation. I wasn't even thinking about the health implications. Thank goodness you were. Like, thank you, NDs out there who are thinking about that part of the plastic equation. For me, the conversation was always around money. It's plastic is cheap, as you said. Plastic is easy and quick to make. We make a literal crap ton of it on this planet to this day. And as I started to look into, I mean, I listened at those meetings and I understood if we want to make this business be something that can heal people and change lives through fungi, we've got to be able to stay in business. So we have to understand budgeting, and that made sense to me. But as I would go away from the table and look at the options, I just had to do my own research about recyclable plastic was a big thing. I heard so many times, don't worry, we're going to put it in these plastic containers, but they're recyclable, so it's okay. And something was not landing for me with that. And one night on TV, it was CBC, it was a docu-series. I think it was titled The Myths of Recycling. The decision was made. And essentially in that docu-series, thank you CBC, right here in my own community, they had planted a little beacon inside a local recycle bin that was put to the curbside and then tracked where that recycling went. And I'm sorry if this horrifies you, but you'll share my pain at that time, because I was already an avid recycler, had been recycling in my school classrooms for 20 years and promoting that. But essentially, the infrastructure we have around recycling here in Canada, and I know in the US as well, is a broken system. We haven't mastered it yet. And what happened in that episode is that the recycling left that person's home from the curbside and was taken to an incinerator. And we don't want to believe that that might happen, but those people running recycling programs are often running businesses too. And you can imagine it is far less expensive to burn what you've picked up than to actually have to sort it and figure out how you're going to make it into something again. In the next part of this series, Myths of Recycling, go check it out. There's actually a link on our sustainability page on our website. They dropped another beacon, and that container ended up in Malaysia. And again, everybody thinks it's going to this recycle depot and it's getting sorted, and some of it does. So I started to look deeper. I literally phoned every recycling depot here in the Lower Mainland to find out what they had to say about that and what they would do with whatever packaging we were considering at the time. I was really thinking about this from a planet perspective and not this health perspective that now means so much more to me and makes so much sense. It turns out what I learned is that since the 1970s, so right around the time that you're telling us, the plastic industry was made well aware this stuff is not good for people and it's not good for the planet either. The petroleum industry, those are the people creating the plastics, gave this kind of message to the world, told us it's okay because the plastics will be recycled and that recyclable packaging is the most sustainable option we have. That was the story. But the sad truth is that most of our recycling doesn't actually get recycled. And it's both National Geographic and our Canadian government that have reports that I read at that time reporting that 91% of plastic isn't recycled, but rather is going to landfills or being incinerated. And that means that only 9% of plastic is actually being recycled.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, global plastic production increased 200-fold since 1950, where they're saying, don't worry, we'll recycle it. Well, I guess if we were recycling it, we wouldn't be needing to make more, right? That would be logical. Don't worry, we're just using what we already made. But you know what? The stat is that 381 million tons were produced in the year 2015. It becomes so clear to us that the only thing recyclable plastic packaging achieves is more plastic. So truth, Plastic packaging is harmful. It's harmful to the planet despite its recyclability for several reasons. And I went straight to the World Economic Forum, and here they are. 5 biggest problems with plastic, specifically plastic bottles or jars,
Mm-hmm.
which unfortunately most health products
Mm-hmm.
are in. Issue 1, low recycling rates. So this is a significant portion of plastic just isn't recycled due to inadequate recycling infrastructure and sometimes consumer behavior as well. What I was learning and experiencing in my own home at that time was that, for one, we're talking about the year 2020. We are in a global pandemic. People are suffering from such horrible mental health tragedies, really, that they're not thinking about sorting their garbage, their recycling, composting, any of this. They needed simplified. And if I was asking somebody to take packaging for me and like put the lid over here and make sure you take that label off to put this over here and then make sure it gets where it has to go, people were not in a mind state to be doing that. In my own home, we have 4 different containers. We have compost, we have garbage, we have recycling that can be commingled or will be picked up at our curb. And then we have recycling that we need to take back to a recycle center because we can't recycle glass at curbside. We can't recycle things like plastic bags at curbside. So a lot of sorting goes on, and that's difficult for a family of 4 with a fairly conscious attitude toward things. So we know low recycling rates, huge issue when it comes to plastic. Okay, then there's the downcycling issue where many plastics are not recycled into the same quality of material, leading to this degradation and limited ability to be able to reuse them. So even if they do get to recycling, we can't really use it again for the purpose it was originally made for, and therefore we do need to keep creating more. And then there's the pollution issue. Plastics that aren't recycled, where do they go? They go to the landfill. They go to our oceans or other natural environments that contribute to pollution of our entire planet, not just the neighborhood where we have done that. Then there's the non-biodegradable sense of these things. Plastics take literally hundreds of years. I think the average stat right now says 450 years for plastic to start to decompose on our planet. So long after we're gone. And these persist in the environment, harming wildlife, all kinds of things that go on. Then we get to the microplastics piece. So after those 450 years have gone by, we think, well, at least they're breaking down. And it does begin to break down into these tiny particles known as microplastics. These contaminate water, soil, air, and pose risks to ecosystems and human health. So, crazy fact about microplastics, these are these tiny fragments resulting from the breakdown of larger plastics, is that they have literally been found everywhere on Earth. They are in the deepest ocean trenches. They are on the highest mountain peaks. These microplastics are even in the air that we breathe, the water we drink, the food that we eat. And studies show that microplastics are even inside human organs now. They've been detected in the bloodstream of both marine and land animals and in us. Even more surprising, plastic particles have been discovered in Antarctica's snow, as well as the Arctic ice, meaning that these plastics are circulating through the planet's atmosphere far from where they originated, far from where we think we're doing that right thing. We knew we need to not be part of this plastic equation no matter what we do. And that meant for us, glass became the next logical thing because we knew we wanted protection from light, protection from moisture, and protection from oxygen. And glass was what was used. And we just thought, let's go back to the roots. What did these medicine women do? They put it into glass. That was where our sustainability started. We just had that glass jar and we produced and it looked beautiful and we were happy until we realized people love this and they don't want to use it for 1 month or 2 months. People are coming back and buying more. And now they have 2 glass jars at home and they can't recycle that glass at the curbside here. And some people are putting their glass into the garbage. And then they had 3 glass jars and then they had 4. And then I started to realize, wow, the transport of all these glass jars to get them to our manufacturer, to bring them to us, to distribute them to a consumer, the transporting of these very heavy glass jars is also contributing to our carbon footprint, contributing to greenhouse gases. What are we going to do about that? And this is where we land at one jar. You get one jar. It is, like Desiree said, infinitely reusable. We need a refill system. That's what we ended up dreaming of. We want one glass jar. We want to be able to give people more mushrooms, but they've got to get to them with a zero waste, no recycling, no landfill use solution. And this is where we come to a compostable pouch. So tell us what you think about this compostability piece. How does that come in?
The compostable pouches, they contribute to a circular economy because it's closing the loop between production, consumption, and disposal in a more sustainable way. So here's how it fits into the regenerative system. The first is being a renewable resource. Compostable pouches are made from biodegradable materials like plants and enzymes. These materials are derived from renewable resources, reducing the reliance on these finite fossil fuels used in conventional plastic production. The cool thing is with our pouches is it's not just the actual pouch itself that's compostable, it's the inks and the dyes and the zipper. You don't have to pull it apart and do all the sorting. It's just one.
And the
right?
adhesives. So
The
much of what I
adhesives.
learned in the beginning, because we were being pushed so hard to be in a recyclable pouch. Like, yes, you don't want to be transporting heavy things. Pouches are lighter.
Yeah.
I think when we did the math, we could put a year's worth of pouches into one truck, where a year's worth of jars would take like 24 trucks to transport them. So we
Okay.
knew a pouch is
Yeah.
a great way to go, but we were really being pushed by those pouch companies to choose the recyclable pouch because it was the most economical and it functioned the best. And your compostable pouch will never keep things as safe for your consumer. And we just had to question that and start doing a lot of testing, which is what we do today.
A lot of testing. Another thing with these compostable pouches is it helps with end of life solutions. So, unlike traditional plastic, which takes over 400 years to decompose, that's many generations, compostable pouches break down naturally into organic matter like carbon dioxide and water. And within a few months, under the right composting conditions, so even, 90 days, they can decompose if they're in a composting environment. And this decomposed material can then be used to enrich the soil, and as opposed to taking away from it or polluting it, supporting agriculture and other industries instead of this pollution and contributing to waste. It helps to reduce waste itself because they reduce the amount of waste that's sent to these landfills, that are sent to incinerators, both of which have negative environmental impacts. And then instead of becoming permanent waste, the packaging material returns to the earth, reducing the ecological footprint of packaging.
And what I love about it is, where do mushrooms grow? Where do our mushrooms grow? They grow on the earth, and we're putting back onto the earth something that can help them to grow. And I think such a big thing is that whether we have been part of the issue or not, when it comes to climate change, we have to deal with it now. There is a legacy layer of carbon up above us that's an issue. And how are we going to draw it down? It's one thing to not contribute more to it, but do we want, if we are healing ourselves, how can we also heal the earth? We can do things that draw down that legacy layer of carbon by having more plants. Yeah. This is literally what's going to do it. What takes carbon dioxide out of the air? Trees, flowers, plants. It's a way for us to put this back into the soil so that we can help to grow more things that will take the carbon out of the air. So I love that all around it's contributing to something that is making us move forward as a humanity instead of backward in time.
And it's also fostering this sense of responsibility for us too, because when you are consciously making a decision, when you know better, you do better. And when you are a part of this refill system, you have that sense of responsibility and pride and integrity. We're promoting a shift in consumer and business behavior towards sustainable disposal practices like composting at home or through municipal systems, helping consumers and us as well participate in the circular economy directly.
Absolutely. And I think that's important, that our intent is not ever to shame somebody else. Every business has started in a place that was different for, like, timing was divine for us, because I think when the global pandemic hit, I can say we all felt a little more connected to Mother Earth. We all could see the change that happened immediately when we were all stuck inside and not contributing to things anymore. I think we hear stories about like deer walking through the streets in Japan, and bear and boars coming out into these places, these cities in Europe that hadn't seen those creatures in decades, kangaroos hopping down the streets where they live. And we saw cleaner air and water than we have seen in centuries on this planet, just in a few short weeks after we were all sent into lockdown. It was like Mother Nature celebrating. She was coming back to herself. And it was just a time that we could be doing the same. And not every company has the advantage of having started at that time, but we did. And when you know better, you do better. We never intend to compete with other brands, but the hope would be to inspire new brands to just, you have to make this decision in the beginning, and you got to run your books to be able to maintain that. And then you got to sit down at the table and fight with the voices that will come alongside and try to talk you out of it because they want you to stay in business. And it's with a good heart that people will say, it would be better if we didn't. And we just have to be consistent in saying, we have to set the example. If we want future generations to know it can be done, we have to succeed.
Yeah.
We look at, as a company, we have goals that are important to us. And a lot of that comes from the UN Sustainable Development Goals that we looked at in the beginning of setting up our core values. And two of them, Goal 13 is addressing warning signs before it comes too late. And this is about taking urgent action to combat climate change. And like we're saying, we're just always thinking about that carbon footprint. And the other one is Goal 14, Sustainable Action Regarding Marine Conservation. Goal 14 says, conserve and sustainably use the oceans, sea, and marine resources for sustainable development. Do you want to talk a bit about the ocean piece of it? What's going on in the water around us?
Healthy oceans and seas are essential to human existence and life on Earth. And the ocean covers 3/4 of the Earth's surface. It contains 97% of the Earth's water, and it represents 99% of the living space on the planet by volume. It's important. The oceans and the seas, they provide key natural resources, including food, medicines, biofuels, and other products, and they help with the breakdown and removal of waste and pollution. And their coastal ecosystems act as buffers to reduce damage from storms. They also act as the planet's greatest carbon sink. But worryingly, marine pollution is reaching extreme levels because over 17 million metric tons are clogging the ocean and that was a stat from 2021. That was 3 years ago. The figure is set to double or even triple by 2040.
A quick Google search to show you what washes up on the beaches that we don't even think about in our day-to-day when we're living in these cities, and the ones that are producing the things that are, they're there, they're showing up, and you can see it. You don't have to go far to see what it looks like on the other end. So who's responsible? I think it all comes down to, is this a consumer issue or is this a business issue? And I think honestly that both consumers and businesses, and we're both, share a responsibility for sustainable packaging, but our roles differ in both their scope and their impact. So as a business, we have significant control over packaging choices and practices. We can innovate and adopt sustainable materials, which is the route we went. We can invest in eco-friendly packaging solutions like compostable pouches and refill systems. We can reduce waste. So this is minimizing excess packaging, the package inside a package thing. Because it looks good on the shelf. I'm like, why are people putting sorry, it's insanity to me, a plastic bottle inside a cardboard box? We see this, many brands, you know who you are, putting packaging inside packaging. Why? Because it looks good on the shelf. Like, is that where we are as a humanity? Yeah, that's a tough one for me to swallow. So we can just minimize excess packaging. We don't need more. We need less. And supply chain accountability. So we have to influence our suppliers to adopt more sustainable practices throughout the production cycle. And we fight for that literally on the daily. How many times do we get told little things? You don't need an organic capsule. Just use the capsule everyone else is using. No, because organic means better for the environment as well. It's not just about what's in our end product, because I don't want to put something non-organic in my body, but it's about the production of that is non-organic being great for the area that those things are being created in order to become a capsule. We fight with our supplier about that one all the time. It's the lid. We'll put the lid on. We'll make it plastic. No, our lid is metal. There's a reason for that. Oh, that's really hard on the machines. Too bad. Figure it out. We're moving forward, not backwards. So supply chain, reducing waste, innovating. Those are all business things. We're in this stronger position to educate as well. We can have this bigger audience to help consumers understand about sustainability, influence these market trends. As we do things, we see other brands doing it and we're cheering for you. We are saying, yes, it's not, oh, they're copying us. It's, we're doing this together.
Inspiring other brands to do better.
Helping each other grow. Many experts believe that since companies control the production process, that we actually bear the larger share of the responsibility. And honestly, I couldn't agree more. But there is a consumer responsibility too. And this is in your purchasing decisions. So choosing eco-friendly products, supporting businesses that are using sustainable packaging, you are creating demand for greener options. A friend of ours says this, voting with your dollars. And it is so true how I will shop in a grocery store now. And you might pay more. Honestly, you're going to pay more. But think about shopping in a health food store versus a conventional grocery store and how many products you will find in glass versus plastic in that health food store. It's not a coincidence. It's better for us. Whatever you're buying, if you have an option for glass and plastic, spend that extra dollar because it will come back to you in spades in your health, right? You can invest now in your wellness or you'll be forced to invest later in your illness.
That's a really great point.
Also, reducing and recycling. Consumers can minimize waste by reusing what you have. So participate in refill systems like ours. Do the right thing by helping companies with whatever infrastructure they've put into place to help the planet out. If it is a recycling situation, take that extra step to actually do the recycling and not assume someone else will. And then advocate for change. Consumers can push businesses and governments toward more sustainable practices by voicing concerns, choosing environmentally conscious brands, speaking up, saying that you like it when you like it, showing people how you're using it. And we love and appreciate our Eversio community doing this. I mean, how many times on social media, that's what people are sharing with us is refill day. They love it. They get their pouch, they're showing us themselves opening it up and refilling. And we're over here just like literally we're sparkling, doing a happy dance. So it's a collaborative approach. Sustainable packaging requires collaboration like everything else. Businesses need to lead with systemic changes, but consumers also have the power to drive demand for greener products through their choices and actions. Both of us, we have to work together to create a more sustainable future. I think I'll leave it like that. An awakened humanity does not harm the environment in which it lives. I like to think if you start to think of yourself as the world, what would you put in the world if that was you? And if we are putting healing things into your body by consuming mushrooms for your health, just really think about putting things in the world that are healing to it at the same time. My final quote, it's on all of our packaging. We put it everywhere in our boxes. We have little bookmarks. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. That was Robert Swan. And I think of it every single day. It is up to you. And it could be a little thing. We always finish with a review. And I think this time we're not going to review about mushrooms. We're not going to tell you how great reishi is for sleep, but it is. We're not going to tell you how great lion's mane is for your brain, but it is. We put out a little poll on social media a few days ago and yesterday asking, what do you think the next podcast will be about? Just to see where people's minds were at. Everybody thought this episode would be about cold and flu season, but that episode is very short. Here it is. Take your turkey tail. It's here. We can't avoid it. Cold and flu season has arrived. All mushrooms are great for immune support. Turkey tail's the big defender. Up your dose of turkey tail. There's your episode. My review is about the company and the packaging. This is from Amy. Her title was Amazing Company, Amazing Products. She says, I love everything about this company. The highest quality product, compostable packaging, and abundance of information about the product, a company built on love. Whew, I get teary saying it. Thank you so much, Amy, for that beautiful review. It's not always just about the mushrooms, but where they come from as well.
Yeah, that's the Eversio experience. It's all of the things that encompass mushroom wellness. My review is from Robin. Robin's title is Love. Love the product, and I love the packaging. A reusable glass jar with future options for refill compostable packaging is amazing. I put a serving in my coffee every morning and love it. Thank you so much, Robin.
That's so much love.
Yeah.
And we'll
I
leave
love
it with that. We love you all, fungi friends. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Be well.
Be well.
That was good.
Okay. Good. We got 7 minutes. That was good.
Yeah.
It still was long, but it felt fast.
Just 40 minutes was decent.
Okay.